Hello folks and welcome back. In this presentation I'm going to be going over chapter 14, taken from my book. That's going to cover me encountering Satan, Marduk, Enki and the Great Red Dragon, Freemasons, Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, Ark of the Covenant, the ego, the higher self, subconscious mind and intuition. Okay, if you recollect in the previous chapter, we went over the whole, scandemic that happens and the kind of tools that were used, none more so than the media, right? And the reasons why they use that, because through us, they know that we manifest things, okay, because we are co-creators and manifestors. And I just read, after going back through Voyages 2, The Secrets of a Mentee by Ashiana Dean, this is re-emphasized that I thought it's very salient to mention. Okay, so on page 106, she writes, open quote, "Humanity was created as a creator species, which means that thoughts and actions entertained by the human will be met in manifest experience, both on Earth and in the life experiences that take place beyond the earthly planes," end quote. And this is otherwise just to re-emphasize the importance of why they do what they have to do in regards to predictive programming, soft disclosure, and getting us to pay attention to all of these scripts that are unfolding, right? Whether it's through the media, TV shows, games, songs, lyrics, right? Movies, that where focus goes, energy flows. And through our template, they understand that we can actually bring about the creation of what they're directing us to create on a mass consciousness collective level, which is why it's so important to pay attention to the group shield, or the collective consciousness of humanity, because unfortunately through the use of black magic, which these guys are experts in, they corral whole masses in order to get them to manifest the timelines that these fallen races want to manifest and lock in regards to timelines on the planet. Okay, so this is one of the huge jobs of the indigos and the starseeds that are here in order to help break that paradigm and act as the splinters within that black magic shield that they've had most of humanity under with all the spell work, in order to wake up, rise up, withdraw consent and shine light in the darkness. If you recollect, the darkness as symbolized as night and all these kind of animals that are otherwise nocturnal, it's normally linked to black magic and sorcery, right? And so it's up to us as the true light bringers, right, in order to expose the darkness, which then is otherwise linked to ignorance, which knowledge dispels in order to come back in alignment with the truth. So you have full knowledge of all the tricks and traps, so they cannot insert and you clandestinely then give your energy towards the spells of everything they want to seed into your consciousness in order to give it power for you, through you, to be able to manifest on the earth, all right, and lock in these kind of timelines that these guys want us to manifest and create to lock in on their behalf. All right, so I thought that's very important to mention before we get into this. Okay, so I write my book starting on chapter 14, as you can see here, very interesting event that took place. It was early in 2021 where I had an email correspondence from someone who stumbled upon my website, who seeks some of my services in relation to IDs I was making that help protect our freedoms. That this person requested my address as he had a gift he wanted to give me. I received the gift in the post a few weeks later. I opened the package and it contained a Catholic handbook of prayers. I opened the book to a page which had the previous 13th page folded over, so the top corner was snug against the spine of the book, revealing the number 13, as you can see here in the image on the slide, which highlighted a sentence on the 14th page saying sanctification on the way to heaven, with there being another insert of a poster card of Pope Francis with a mild grin on his face with a raised right hand as if to greet or wave goodbye to someone. On the reverse of this card had the date on top that read 13 Marzo 2013, translating to the 13th of March 2013, the date in which he was elected Pope. The card had numerous quotes in different languages of the following, open quote, "Dear brothers and sisters, good evening. You know that the duty of the conclave was to give Rome a bishop. It seems that my brother cardinals have gone to the ends of the earth to get one. But here we are. I thank you for the warm welcome." Close quote. I then noticed another insert of a folded poster at chapter 13 of the book, which was titled 13th Station, Jesus is laid in the arms of his blessed mother. I unfolded the poster and it read on the one side, "Calm is the campaign against living miserably," which was a suicide awareness prevention poster. We'll get to it in a minute. I've got images of this. Okay, we're just explaining the story first. After reading this, I immediately got a bit of a trigger, so I knew I had to protect myself a little bit from any subliminal activations that may take place. I turned the poster over to otherwise see some advertisements of clothing with two noticeable satanic symbolisms portrayed. One on a hoodie that has Natas, okay, emblazoned on the back, which is obviously Satan backwards, and a picture of a horned devil with pitchforks etched with 666, with one stabbing the eye of this entity who was a red skeleton with an inverted cross in the nose, holding the typical rock sign up, with one hand symbolic of the horns, with the scarf embedded with pentagrams as part of an advertisement by the heavy metal band Slayer, titled Lurk and Destroy. Okay, the page itself seems to have been ripped out of a Kerrang magazine, which is a popular rock / heavy metal music magazine. Okay, so yeah, as you can see there, this is the weird handbook of prayers that got sent to me by this guy who I made IDs for up in Scotland. And obviously it was all very timely, so it connected into me inevitably seeing Satan in the astrals. So yeah, very bizarre how the number 13, so a lot of 13 was coming through with this. So I was very cautious when I started to see what was going on. So I kind of protected myself and just took a breath, paused, and kind of just shut off any consent, right, for any spell work that might have been kind of imbued subliminally with this package. And so there you can see on the back of Pope Francis, the statement of obviously him coming into power after the previous Pope resigned, which, if you recollect, was linked to a lightning bolt hitting the St. Peter Basilica in the Vatican not too long after he handed in his resignation, I think it was. Okay, iconical of Jupiter Zeus handing over the Lord Temporal, the coming of the new age of Aquarius, which is governed by Uranus and Saturn, right? So it was all very symbolic. And so, yeah, in the back of the book, you can see this kind of leaflet was otherwise wedged, folded up in chapter 13, which is all about, Jesus laid in the arms of his blessed mother. So I'm thinking, there's some weird stuff going on here. And so this was otherwise, calm, which is a campaign against living miserably. And that's when I kind of was like, I took a pause. I was like, okay, hang on a minute. So there are going to be like any kind of suicide programs invoked in me and my subconscious or something. So I just kind of took a few breaths and, kind of just calm myself a little bit and obviously withdrew consent. So then I turned the leaflet over and lo and behold, all these subtle symbolisms, right? On the top there, the guys I mentioned, Natas, okay, which is Satan backwards. And then, the bottom left, poster of Slayer from the rock band based on the new album, Lurk and Destroy or something like that, Seek and Destroy. And a few other Ammon, Amarth and stuff like this, right? And what's interesting, we'll get to that image on the bottom left, we'll get to later, which was quite an interesting advert that was released under 2020, beginning of 2021, just before I had this event happen and me experiencing what I experienced in the astrals. So another interesting synchronicity is that Wimborne has the bus route number of 13 as well. So there's a lot of 13 coming through then, which you see on all buses linked to the town and bus stops around town. The Minster Church is dedicated to St. Cuthberga. There is a Freemasonic lodge located just around the corner from the church, which is also called the Lodge of St. Cuthberga. This connects into the house that my parents bought back in 2007 when we moved in, which had affiliations with the church and no doubt Freemasonic lodge, as it too was placed on Cuthberga Road and otherwise had tunnels connecting to at least the Minster, which were bricked over in the cellar. This is all relevant as about a month later, whilst in the house, asleep one night, I had a lucid astral encounter where it was all of a sudden inside the Minster in Wimborne, stood opposite a big black door that was padlocked that I just knew I needed to get to and open. I was with a few other people assisting me with this endeavour, as there were these skeleton warrior type entities trying to stop us and me getting to this door. I remember clearing out a few of them on my own using a short sword I had, and just as I was about to reach the door, a load of SWAT personnel appeared with guns pointing at me, where I immediately stuck my hands up. One of the other guys I was with jumped into them like a bowling ball, which knocked them all down and out, clearing the way for me. I thanked him and he just nodded. I got to the door and bashed the padlock open with the base of my sword handle. I then proceeded to open this door, which stood right opposite the main entrance to the Minster as you walk in, which leads to the opposite side of the church where the cemetery is, which is not used by the public, and I doubt it's really seldom used at all, apart from maybe funeral services or special ceremonies. I pulled the door open, which revealed an immediate entrance into another realm, which had rich green pastures, with a yellow bricked road that seemed to resemble gold, something very similar to the Wizard of Oz movies, that went as far as I could see over these small undulating meadows, where I shifted my gaze to the right to see a patch of forest bordering these meadows, where I then saw how Hollywood depicts him, Satan. With goat legs, big red upper body, a very long solemn face with two great big horns protruding from his head, sat on a big golden chair looking over to the right of where I was, and over the church where he fixed his gaze. He momentarily and slowly turned his head toward me in a nonchalant, pensive manner, and stared at me for maybe 4 to 5 seconds, then slowly moved his stare back to where he fixed his gaze. Sat down, he would have been 10 stories tall. To give you the indication of the size, he was absolutely massive. So not long after this interaction, I had mini lightning bolts being hurled at me by these small wizard-like gnomes cast from wands that were trotting down this yellow brick road toward me, whizzing past my ear and hitting the door right near my head as I was dodging them, which made me backtrack, close the door, where I then woke up and the memory faded. This was very interesting, given the symbology of me receiving that Catholic prayer book within a month of this encounter with the satanic symbolism, as well as 2 weeks prior, having a lucid dream of coming across a church of St. George, where I saw all of these statues of different saints slaying dragons. Manly P. Hall writes, open quote, in his book Secret Teaching of All Ages, St. George is looked upon as the patron of the order, for he typifies the higher nature of man overcoming the dragon of his own lower nature, close quote. It was on the next full moon that I encountered Satan again, in the dream state, but this time it was at our house. It was night time in the astrals and everyone had been asleep, including I, who was prompted to wake up to warn everyone to get downstairs as I saw Satan picking up huge rocks out of the earth that he was then hurling toward the house. We all rushed downstairs, wherein we could see him and hear him walking around the side where we had these big screen doors. Every step he took was like a T-Rex out of Jurassic Park, with permeable vibrations infusing any atoms in its wake. We proceeded to enter further down to the hidden recesses of Earth, where there were these beautiful honeycomb-like chambers of caves that had polished marble flooring and natural ambient lighting that warmed these caves with a yellow/orange glow. I was with my mother and father and a few other random people I did not recognize. We made it into the first cave entrance that connected to the house. It's interesting to note, again, that certain layers of the dimensional scale give about slightly different appearances, geographies, and accessibility to places as compared to what we all recognize here in 3D, which goes into this notion of as above, so below, and the dimensional scale structure as hypothesized by Pythagoras and within the Cathara grid, that often gives this kind of same but different feeling with these dream experiences when it's clear you're in some kind of high dimensional representation of familiar places. Where exactly I was within the scale, I do not know. Most people talk about the astrals being the 4D band of reality within density 2, with it split into the upper and lower astrals, the latter being very treacherous. However, as we've mapped with the Cathara grid and with the Sephiroth, coupled with my experience of being in some of these underworld type reality fields that go down the dimensional scale and into the reverse mathematical interface of black hole Metatronic creation, there is a clear distinction between these realms that I have felt and seen, and that I believe can be accessed within these so-called dream experiences, where we could be stationed at any number of the dimensional zones along the scale of creation when having such experiences. To continue, not long after entering the cave, Satan had broken through the surface and into the cave, where he immediately shapeshifted into a big red dragon. And otherwise, I did like a AI image of me describing the scene. It was kind of very similar to that, basically, with the proportions too of how big he was compared to me stood in front of him. There were these great big fireproof umbrellas, as well as spears leant up against another rail guarding a staircase, taking you down and into other cave networks. My father grabbed one of these umbrellas and opened it, and I grabbed the spear. We moved closer to the dragon, bracing a few times where he projected fire from his breath, which soared past the edges of the umbrella, where you could feel the crisp, toasty temperature of its blaze. We got close enough for me to throw one of these spears at him, which hit him on the face but bounced off as the scales were too strong. Because we were close, the dragon spun around and whipped its tail into my father and the umbrella, which made him hit the cave wall with a thud to my left. I jumped back to miss being hit, where I was now open, stood right in front of the dragon with no protection. I immediately scampered over to my father on the marble surface that all of a sudden became quite slippery, which was to my advantage, as the dragon was struggling to claw its way to me to try and snap at me with its huge claws. I could hear the scraping of the claws trying to gain traction as it was advancing, but was slipping a lot. I remember seeing my father laying there unconscious, and with my mind I reduced him in size to that of a baby, so it was easier to carry him in one arm, as I scampered away with a kind of bent over clawing motion with my free hand to get ahead of the advancing dragon that was very close behind me. I yelled at the others to get down the stairs and into lower caves out of harm's way, where I managed to escape with everyone to safety. It was a mad astral experience. So lucid. Like I said, when you're in that kind of high dimensional state, things become more liquid in regards to consciousness being able to affect matter. And yeah, I've had experiences where I've been like a magician, being able to just completely with my mind, given in situations, change anything and everything around me. In this case, with my father, make him smaller so I can pick him up and get him out of harm's way. So the Deeper Cave Network had views of the surface through small slits where I could see Satan had shapeshifted back into his upright form and climbed out of the cave and was back on the surface stomping around. I remember making sure everyone was safe before I was then met with 3 others, where we immediately walked off to find out where Satan went, as we were planning to bring him down / take him out. We continued along the cave network to scout out where he had gone and began formalizing a plan. And it was here my memory faded and I woke up. Okay, so it's interesting to note that a few months later, I was tuned into a recent interview on the Super Soldier Talk YouTube channel with James Rink, where his guest, who was a seer, a remote viewer, exclaimed that Marduk had been slain. So if we recall with the races outlined in the MCO AMCC teachings, we see that the Marduk Draman Satan Anunnaki linked to Nibiru, okay, as well as the Marduk Luciferian Anunnaki, which is linked to the Thoth Enki Lulatan family, a Malian Anunnaki Marduk Satan family. So I had a few, it's kind of part of the Anu Seraphim, right, crossbred between the Omicron Draconians, the Dracons, which are kind of these dragon reptilian entities, and some of the Anunnaki, Anu Elohim, right? They've got that kind of emergence, hybridization, stitching of those 2 fallen race lines, Anu Seraphim. I had a few later dream experiences where I was conversing with people about this event, and it was known that Enki, right, had been slain, and it seemed that I was involved in this event, though I have no memory of the event other than up to where my memory faded with what I shared with the astral experience. It's interesting to note that the ties to Nibiru and the rhetoric of how the Anunnaki had come to mine the earth for gold, which I've heard that is meant to be used in order to help sustain the atmosphere of Nibiru, as well as used to help capture and transmit soul energy to them, that may help explain what I saw when I first encountered Satan, Enki / Marduk, right, sat on a big golden chair, the supposed prince of this world, right, according to the Christian Bible, with this golden lane sweeping across the meadows. Could that have been a portal linked to Nibiru, where Satan, i.e. Marduk, Enki, okay, a supposed prince within that particular family race / empire, was located? This is kind of what I was speculating. I can't confirm, but just connecting the dots based on the information and experiences I had. Very interesting. But yeah, that image depicts pretty well the size difference, okay, with me, had my father there, these massive umbrellas that were kind of like fireproof, and this thing was just belching, scorching hot fire that was coming right over us. And then I had these spears, and I remember just chucking it, and it just bounced off like a toothpick, unfortunately, and its tail came round and just slammed my dad. I kind of jumped out of the way, and then yeah, scampered over to him, turned him into like a baby so I could pick him up and then just peg it and go down deeper into more of the deeper structures of these cave networks. And then he shapeshifted, got back up, walked along, and then yeah, 3 others kind of met with me and we were plotting to take him down. And these were like very angelic warriors, basically, like I was. I've always had this encryption, like I said before. Even coming down here, I felt like there was something that happened with my incarnation that didn't go to plan, involving some kind of battles. But yeah, it was a very interesting experience nonetheless. And like I said, given what was sent to me, the Catholic Book of Prayers, Catholicism is linked into the Omicron Draconians. And we all know now there's so many friendly allegiances, right? But certainly part of the Anu Seraphim are working with the Omicron Draconians and these dragon lines, right? And this obviously red dragon is linked to one of the fallen dragon lines of the fallen races, right? According to Yasha Ashiana, I think you've got the white dragons, you have the green dragons and the red dragons, okay, and these are all fallen angelic races. So does every church linked to a Freemasonic lodge hide portals that connects to his location? There is a popular video online published by Altian Child, okay, who's an X Factor winner in Australia, who became embroiled in the whole secret handshake society of Freemasonry with its rise to fame and all the perks of the entertainment business that has always been known to be controlled by satanic forces, with plenty of symbolism and stories to suggest this across the music, art and film industries, especially Hollywood, who believe that Freemasonry was Satan's secret church. It is my best guess that certain individuals within Freemasonry quite high up would be trained in astral projection to be able to liaise with their prince in order for orders to be orchestrated across the globe. Just like we saw in 2020 with the bat out of hell coronavirus, we had good old Anthony Fauci here, right? As you can see, medical advisor at the time, showing us the famous hidden hand before one press release when the whole pandemic was in full swing. Okay, this hidden hand lets the other initiates know that the individual depicted is part of this secret brotherhood and that his actions were inspired by the Masonic philosophy and beliefs. Furthermore, the hand that executes the actions is hidden behind cloth, which can symbolically refer to covert nature of the Masons' actions. So yes, right, like I said, hidden in plain sight. The language of symbolism is so valuable, okay, which is why it's so important to learn the knowledge of evil. Until you know evil, you know nothing. Okay, so you can read between the lines and see what's going on behind the narratives and the propaganda, right? But yeah, their hubris will be their downfall. So another interesting observation with the whole 2020 ordeal, okay, with the coronavirus coming out of the bat, obviously bat out of hell linked into, and the bat leading me to the window, okay, around that time, which kickstarted my next battle in series of events that you recollect, which happened around August, September of 2020. So it's all connected, this bat symbolism and the fatale. So whether he's part of the fatale, who knows? You know what I mean? Just not much is said about the fatale apart from they're connected to the White Dragon group, right? And there's obviously this is connected to red dragons. But yeah, I mean, the jury's out for me. All I know is that pretty obviously aligned with evil. So whatever stands in front of me, who's holding the encryption of that, starting my growth in humanity's free will and doing what they've done to creation, then yeah, don't care what color they are, what form they take, just got to get rid of them. So another interesting observation with the whole 2020 ordeal, with the coronavirus coming out of the bat out of hell, okay, and the bat leading me to the window, if you recollect in the previous presentation that I covered, which kickstarted my next battle, right, and series of events that led me to Satan, was an advert published by Match.com that used satire to portray matching Satan with the year 2020, represented as a hypothetical woman under the hashtag match made in hell, okay, where the transcript read, this is Satan speaking, I started by using the Match custom search filter. I filtered out joy, happiness, toilet paper, and reason. Most years I've dated are, I don't know, a little straightforward. I mean, there is a little misery, but nothing truly soul-crushing about them. And the woman representing 2020 responds by saying, I just want to be remembered, you know. Do you know the poem The Road Less Travelled by Shakespeare? I actually have the tattoo of it. And Satan replies, don't ask me where. Woman representing 2020, you devil. Satan replies, haha, guilty. Satan says, she gets me. That's the best part. You meet someone that takes time to see beneath the surface. Woman representing 2020, of the earth. It's just a perfect match. In fact, I'll play this so you guys can see the dialogue, and it's quite obvious, just again rubbing it in our faces, okay?
Oh, I've dated much worse guys than him. Much worse. I mean, at least he's famous.
I started by using the Match custom search filter. I filtered out joy, happiness, toilet paper, and reason.
Boom.
Most years I've dated are a little, I don't know, straightforward. I mean, there's a little misery, but nothing truly soul-crushing about them.
I just want to be remembered. You know, do you know the poem, The Road Less Traveled by Shakespeare? I actually have the tattoo of it.
Don't ask me where.
You devil.
Guilty. She gets me. That's the best part. When you meet someone that takes time to see beneath the surface.
Of the earth. It's just a perfect match.
So I comment, you know, talk about rubbing it in our faces and leaving it all out in the open. A tactic often used not only to mock the stupidity and ignorance of the human race, but to help with the occult magical process of revelation of the method, soft disclosure, and predictive programming that goes into universal laws of manifestation when deriving consent and discharging recompense. As we know, ignorance of the law is no excuse, and compliance is compliance, whether done through coercion, fraud, or through silence. As silence is acquiescence, something these guys are constantly communicating to each other out in the open and to the world, which takes us back to why symbolism and the ability to read it is one of the most powerful tools for any initiate, which is why it rules the world. Okay, it appears within the MCO AMCC teachings that Freemasons are associated with a few different competing races. Under the Phantom Matrix Intruder races, we have the following associated with Freemasons. We have the Marduk Luciferian Anunnaki, we've got the Pleiadian Samjays Luciferian Anunnaki, and the Thoth Enki Zephanian Anunnaki, Who exactly this being was and his affiliations to which particular race, I'm not sure. The only name I recalled in later dream experiences was Enki, that tied into that event. The Bible specifically talks about the great red dragon in the book of Revelation, which this whole timeline ever since my awakening had started to play out for me, given the great sun in heaven, stellar alignment, and my chakra activation in 2017. They say that the further up the scale of dimensionality you go, the larger and more embodied you become of your higher identities. Hence, beings in higher harmonic universes are typically a lot larger. Theory which would put the entity Satan/Enki I had encountered as possibly a dark avatar level being. Could it have been linked to the fatale? Don't know, question mark. The supposed worst of the worst. Only in later materials of the MCO-AMCC teachings does Iasha cover the concept of goat-type demonic entities that are actually linked to the fatale, which is symbolic of the appearance of Satan that I saw, and as Hollywood depicts him. That's what I mean. The fallen dragon groups, there's three that she teaches. You've got the white dragons, which are linked to the first four fatale, supposedly from the deity planes that came in, that got on board with the drama and reversed their templates and became evil. Then you've got the green dragons, which kind of linked to the Weser decks, which are the fallen Anunnaki, and then the red dragons, which kind of, I think, linked into the fallen Weser Drax, right, which are the fallen Omicron Draconians from the Weserley matrices that fell before we had what happened in our matrix with the black hole implosion. So the SSP community talk about how most extraterrestrials are on average 12 foot tall, which probably coincides with the density 2 soul level identity. And it's like the Russian doll effect. The further down the dimensional scale you go, the tighter and more restrictive/dense the laws of physics become, inducing the need to replicate smaller quantum units of its higher corresponding parts. However, I was still the same size. Maybe it is subjective, and having control over your atomic structure and DNA at those higher levels would allow the flexibility to appear however you wish within what your DNA template allows. You also have the concept of the size of planets and the available quanta field of energy that is obviously you're being able to access within your template can also determine and dictate your size too. So obviously, here on Earth, things are being manipulated, suppressed with all the technologies, things that have been done to it, which is probably, switched off a lot of that capability of us being able to expand fully and be what we should be, given our untainted, unmanipulated state. It's kind of like, 10 to 12 foot beings with a 12-strand DNA template. And then, as we go up, we can then obviously gain more control over our DNA template, and based on where you are, I guess, can also dictate the kind of size that you can expand into based on the energy available to you with those flows. But obviously in a phantom matrix, those kind of laws will be a lot more skewed and probably abused for especially the elite royal entities as part of these race lines to embody much larger than normal structures compared to everyone else, which kind of would then reinforce this might is right, supremacy, elitist, sexist kind of slant that they have, obviously with their philosophies of the arrogance and the monarchical, hierarchical modalities and ideologies they harbour. So Iasha states that at the centre of the Catholic creed is the draconian Leviathan races, and the Protestant spin on the Christ period is the Anunnaki. Right? Having been sent a Catholic prayer book and the church having ties with the Freemasonic Lodge, it certainly rhymes with the Marduk Luciferian Anunnaki lines, but also the Omicron Draconians associated with the Knights Malta Catholic Templar Knights and the Roman Mafia, who shares affiliations with the Marduk Luciferian Anunnaki, who are said to have infiltrated the Knights Templar Freemasons, as well as the Marduk Draman Satan Anunnaki races, primarily responsible for the necromancy, Satanic Bible, and Satanism. So here you have the map, right? So you've got Wimble-Minster Church, which is a photo there on the left, and a map showing the link between my old house on Cuthberger Road, which is there, our house is circled there, and St. Cuthberger Freemason Lodge, right at the Minster, that bird's eye view Google map. So you can see they're very close. And supposedly where our house was, because it's obviously on Cuthberger Road, it's all connected. Minster is called St. Cuthberger. The Freemasonic Hall is named after St. Cuthberger, I think. So it's all connected. That there was apparently underground passageways linking the three sites. Okay, which is very interesting. And so here's the Freemasonic Lodge from the outside, very inconspicuous, built in otherwise 1717. And they put a plaque on there in 2017, which was the start of the so-called Great Sun in Heaven, which is quite interesting, marking it being 300 years old. So Yasha has this to say about the Freemasons from Dance for Freedom, Disc 1, open quote: "There is more of the Anunnaki and Anunnaki-related crew than there are the Omicron Dracs. What is manifest here, as in the planetary political drama, is you have Knights Templar, aka Freemasons, and you have the Knights of Malta, each representing one side of that agenda, now called Freemasons. These are the head people in the Illuminati forces here. Most of them have no idea about any of this," referring to her presentation about the Stargate Templar system. "They're just considered the peons, okay? They think they are the head honchos. They've been told they are, but they have no idea who's pulling strings behind the scenes anymore. Some of them do Luciferian stuff and satanic stuff, that kind of thing. They are worshipping these beings that they heard about in the Bible that were the bad guys, so they figured they could get power that way. They're still as clueless as anybody else, but they are the main political divisions you'll see with this. It's also going among the religions. This is why, when they try to move forward the script of the World War III drama, religion will be at its core, because literally behind the religions are sets of teachings that were distortions run by either one side or the other. But it's not as clear cut. There are some in the Muslim races that are of each side, some people in the Christian races that are of each side, so you can't say the Muslims are on this side, the Christians are on that side, and of course you have the Jews. Whose side are they on? They're all mixed. Where it's not the nationality or the chosen religion or person, they're all hidden, so they can't even tell each other from each other. There are certain Jews, Muslims and Christians who are actually all up for body snatch, say from a Weesadrak, Draconian side, and the same groups of people who will be up for body snatch on the Anunnaki, Weesadek, Anunnaki side. The thing is, they've all been conned into following what used to be pieces of sacred information that have now been twisted and distorted, and they're going to be turned on each other in order so they self-destruct, so they can decide who's going to be on what piece of land, coding what grids, just like we can run frequency through our bodies. Well, those who have been Metatronicked also can run frequency through their bodies, which means that Weesadeks and Weesadraks have the ability to use them once they've Metatronicked them to zap through the currents under their own mathematical coding to determine the grids beneath their feet, where those lands will fall once they transmute into the black hole system. So that's what the whole Armageddon drama is about. Who's going to get it? Okay, who's going to get it? We have to decide it here, because once it falls, it goes where the mathematical coding is. So they have to have the battle here, and that's the whole story of what Armageddon has been about, close quote. So yeah, it's not as easy as black and white, right? Cut and dry within each movement, even within politics, religion, secret societies, right? There's both sides being represented in there, okay, within this drama that's unfolding. Whether there's any Christics in these kind of institutions, probably not. I think it'd be a pretty tough gig to be involved in, consenting and taking those oaths that I think would violate your right to be a Christic spirit, to penetrate a mystery school like that that's running all the reverse Metatronic, Kabbalistic, philosophical teachings. That I think it's just better steering clear of those kind of places, right, and just run the currents without being part of any kind of institution or society or religion for that matter, and just embody that free spirit, right, of the freedom teachings, knowing that the temple is your body, right? There's no church or thing outside of yourself other than the beautiful nature as it is, and the wildlife and things like that can appease that process of you activating and altering your own temple in alignment with the Christ, and obviously doing the important works here for the grids. But yeah, who knows? You never know. There might be ones out there that have gone into diving deep into the occult, like I kind of was, but without any affiliation or taking an oath, that I had to roll up my sleeves and get my auras a bit dirty, to take on the knowledge of evil and what that drew into my fields and what experiences that attracted, in order for me in this lifetime to certainly glean a lot of wisdom for the tricks and traps and techniques and weapons of evil, in order for me to combat effectively and learn the lessons of that, to rise higher until I came into obviously the freedom teachings that gave me the higher perspective and context to come back into alignment, that served me very well for my mission as a kind of Christic warrior. There's many different types. Obviously did the grid work too, but it's certainly been attacked like you can not believe. It's just been nuts. That's why I had to write a book, in order to help me process all of it and also share my story, to show that collectively, if I've been able to survive what I've survived, with the worst of what they try to hurl at me, then that is now seeded within the shield of the collective consciousness, which is going to make us all stronger, because whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? So yeah, it's kind of like, in my view, viewpoint, it's been tough, but a necessary battle in order to reach that triumph and collective strength that individually we're all kind of contributing towards in strengthening our shields, right, our collective consciousness. So Manape Hall writes of Armageddon, thus, open quote, "To the neophyte, Armageddon represents the last struggle between the flesh and the spirit, when, finally overcoming the world, the illumined soul rises to union with its spiritual self. The judgment signifies the weighing of the soul and was borrowed from the mysteries of Osiris. The rising of the dead from their graves and from the sea of illusion represents the consummation of the process of human regeneration. The sea of fire into which those are cast who fail in the ordeal of initiation signifies the fiery sphere of the animal world," close quote. And I write, so whilst revisiting this subject, oh yeah, this is crazy. So whilst revisiting this subject and spending my time writing this, I actually had another very vivid dream experience, okay, where I was in the astrals. Again, so me writing about this experience of seeing Satan and connecting it into the church and where I was living invoked another weird astral experience with him coming in. So I actually had another very vivid dream experience where I was in the astrals somewhere in Queensland, Australia, where I'm currently residing whilst writing this and whilst doing this presentation too, where I was outside and everything was especially lucid and very colourful. I noticed there was a portrayal of me and Satan as huge avatar entities facing each other as lightly etched effigies in the sky, akin to anyone who has watched a drone show with lights at night, and also similar to the Bali Moon experience wherein we were in battle and I struck Satan in the abdomen and grabbed his horns, ripped them off his head and spun them both round in my hands, and first thrusted the horn in my right hand into his ribs, and the one in my left hand into his ribs too, where I impaled him, gripping the horns tighter, twisting my arms inwards a little bit and lifting them up, whilst his weight and gravity made the horn sink in deeper. I remember seeing all this and cheering, literally pumping my fist in the air, and then I heard this great bellowing laugh that was accompanied by a statement he made about how I was not strong enough to defeat him fully, but then I laughed back, mocking him, knowing I had something up my sleeve. This is where I was then moved to these spinning cups akin to what you see at a fair with one of the rides, where I stood inside of one of them, and on the edges was a flat top surrounded by coloured paint in small pots that I could tip into this cup as it was moving around a circle track while spinning slowly. There was a specific colour sequence unique to my encryption that I had to pour into the cup, which unlocked more power being transmitted to my avatar self through me. As the colours poured in, they mixed and filled up the bottom to about my mid-shin level, which transmitted this powerful energy up and through my body and into my avatar self. That was battling Satan that I can see that I was intrinsically connected to. It was so bizarre. It then reset, and I was hit with the realization about the secret up my sleeve, which involved the feminine version of me to stand in the cup, like my twin flame, right, with me and pour both our encryption colours into the cup. However, I got one of the colours wrong. It was a yellow that I'd poured, which I should not have. And instead of feeling empowered, I felt poisoned, and I reset on the floor outside of the cup where I was, then met by this woman who had the encryption and connection to St. Cuthberga, who was supposedly a nun, right, who appeared Middle Eastern with a turban scarf hoodie around her head and bent down to me, held my hand, and said to me something along the lines of, open quote, "You have been involved in wars in Iraq and Iran with Stargate 10 Abaddon. Now and in past lives, there is something happening there, and that you have brought the occult with you to the lands of Queensland that you must clear," close quote. It was so bizarre, and what was bizarre as well, I think about a month or 2 months after that, I had someone add me or follow me on Instagram who was part of the teachings, who was otherwise in that area of Stargate 10. And yeah, it was kind of like, had the same encryption as if like that was maybe her or a higher self that was coming in to kind of warn me of this. And let me tell you, ever since moving back to Australia, it certainly has felt like I've been in a huge battle with the occult forces here that I obviously go into in later chapters that almost progressed into the green dragons as well that I was battling, which was, yeah, bizarre. So I remember being somewhat baffled, but part of me knew and was bewildered as to how she knew. She helped me up, then left the scene, and I went back in the cup to repeat this process, wherein my memory faded and I woke up. Abaddon in Iran is home to Stargate 10, and the Astro writes in Voyages 2, open quote, "Areas such as Pakistan, Iraq, and Iran are territories housing key access sites to the coveted Stargate 10, so these areas, as well as several others, will be preliminary zones of conquest that the UIR will attempt to secure under UIR Illuminati governance," close quote. What is intriguing is that this all connects into the Twin Towers 9/11 event, with Revelations 9/11 mentioning, Abaddon, the supposed king/angel of the bottomless pit, which shares similar phonetics to Abaddon in Iran. The covert Illuminati governments then indeed infiltrated Iraq under the false pretense of weapons of mass destruction. Another coincidence is this connection with Stargate 10, Abaddon, Iran, and Stargate 4 Giza, Egypt, is the east-west center line axis upon which the Golden Eagle A-pin system is structured, whose tail comes down into Australia and the Pacific, where I'm located at this time of writing this. The eagle has been a prominent symbol ever since my awakening, with this concept of Aquarius being fixed there, in which the eagle is king of, but also with the higher nature of Scorpio, as we have dissected. And otherwise, in my later chapters, I'll show you when I moved over here, when I get to that in the timeline in 2023, 2024, there was confirmation of this Golden Eagle A-pin that I'd been working with one of the energies with my time going from UK to Denver to UK, and then Australia, back to UK and Australia again, and Bali too. So it's interesting when you come into knowledge and experiences later on in your journey that connect when you look back at your life, especially when overlaid with a lot of the geography of the Stargate locations, the A-pin sites, which you may have been moved to unknowingly with family, holidays, or decisions to travel abroad, etc., that may very well have had some importance when running energy into the grids on behalf of the Guardian mission down here. For instance, I've traveled with the family on holiday to Andorra twice, which is where the Metatron Seed Atom anchors in through the Chaldea thermal spa site that Yasha had visited a few times during the 2012 workshops to help prevent the release of the energetic cap the Guardians put there. And apparently, supposedly, how the Fatali got in was through Speaker 3 doing a grid work there at that site, and they got infiltrated by the Fatali, and that's what caused the shield split, which is quite interesting. I was also moved to Florida, which is Grail site, and the control gate for Earth's planetary shields, in order to search for work in the super yachts in 2008, where I joined a boat called Phoenix, out of all the names, right? And in that boat, I crossed the Atlantic twice and cruised all over the Caribbean, all located near Florida and the Phoenix wormhole site and Bermuda Triangle, which connects into the whole 1983 Montauk project and the Phoenix Spite sites in Manhattan and the Pentagon that were responsible for the destruction of these buildings during the 9/11 events of the Twin Towers. Furthermore, the Phoenix wormhole was linked into the Jehovah Anu Elohim Dominion quest of taking Earth into their Phantom Matrix via the Phoenix and Dove A-pin systems. On Earth, that connected into the portions of D7 Universal Stargate 7 Arcturus under their control. Yasha claims that the 7 candlesticks, which are the 7 churches, link into the 7 massive crystal pylon selenite rods placed within the Stargate 7 Arcturus control grid, and the 7 stars, which are the 7 angels of the 7 churches, are linked to the corresponding implant sites on Earth's planetary shield, which goes into the 7 seals of Jehovah. This, I would guess, is all connected into Saturn as well, being solar Stargate 7, as we have gone over and have already ascertained it's linked to the false godlet Jehovah Anu Elohim collective and their corresponding Anunnaki alliances with the Alpha and Omega Yod-Hey Bar-Hey black hole wormhole complex. As Yasha writes in Voyagers 2, open quote, the HDC network was intended to serve as a series of siphoning channels. Portions of Earth's shields and selected populations could be pulled through the Phoenix wormhole into the Phantom Arcturus matrix, as the Nibirians used the Phoenix wormhole to draw the rest of Earth's planetary shields into merger with Phantom, Nibiru, and Tiamat. The network of Jehovian HDC implants in Earth's planetary shields is known as the Dove A-pin system, denoting the shape of its primary grid when viewed from space with photoradionic scanning equipment. The Dove, like the Falcon, the Phoenix, the Serpent, and the Dragon A-pin systems represent aerial maps of the fallen angelic intruder ET control networks placed in Earth's Templar. The HTC implants of the Dove A-pin system are frequency generation points implanted into Earth's body that can create external artificial reverse spin, phantom matrix spin, Merkaba vehicles of various sizes and designs. Once generated, these spiraling electromagnetic reverse Merkaba fields can hold a person or object or an entire city or continent, depending upon the size of the field, through hyperdimensional transport into phantom matrix. When used in specific ways, the HTCs form plasma ships, beautiful elongated orbs of glowing living light that can, if programmed to do so, step down in frequency to form solid objects, usually silver metallic spaceships, complete with the Jehovian phantom crew. Close quote. So there's a whole new interface and technology that has been revealed to us through Yasha's work that we can also apply to scripture, world events, and personal experiences, which offers an incredible angle of discovery when applying it to decoding the mysteries. It also re-emphasizes this importance of why certain sites on Earth are more sought after, have experienced conflict, and why maybe there are lots of weird events that unfold due to the natural and unnatural invisible grid of Earth's Templar wormholes technologies and corresponding energies being run through them that give rise to paranormal phenomena, such as with helping to explain the experiences I was having with my time in the house at Cuthberger and the interface with the Minster and Freemasonic Lodge. which no doubt connected into the crystal cave beneath the tree in the front garden that would have been part of these hidden energetic ley lines and planetary Templar interface infrastructure. So we're going to touch on the Bermuda Triangle now and the sinking of Atlantis. So you can see a map. This is taken out of MCO AMCC teachings. I write, these hidden technologies can help us understand such mysteries as the sinking of Atlantis and the Bermuda Triangle, with often many reports of strange phenomena being observed and even planes and boats going missing. This is due to what is called port interface networks from one of two wormholes left after the resulting cataclysm of Atlantis during the last stellar activation cycle that connects into Earth's ley line and corresponding Stargate structure. Bermuda is the corresponding site for Universal Stargate 3, where one of these wormholes resides, which are referred to as artificially created trans-dimensional geophysical anomalies that have supposedly existed off the east coast in the Atlantic Ocean since 10,500 BC. The two ancient Atlantean wormholes are located off the US east coast at 69.5 degree west longitude, the first of which intersects this longitudinal line at 32 degrees north latitude, with the second at 30 degrees north. The former connecting into axiotonal line 7, horizontal ley line 3, corresponding to Stargate 3, Bermuda, 9, Bamso, Tibet, and the Bermuda, Jerusalem, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bamso, Nagasaki line, with the second one on horizontal ley line 4/10, corresponding to Stargates 4, Giza, 10, Abadan, Iran, and it's the Giza-Persian Gulf Midway line. As Yasha writes, open quote, collectively, the two Atlantean wormholes and the various Templar port interface networks connected to them are responsible for the odd phenomena of plane/boat disappearances and electromagnetic anomalies in the area of the Atlantic called the Bermuda Triangle, close quote. So what happened to the continent of Atlantis that had inspired or has inspired so much speculation and captured the imaginations of so many? According to the MCO AMCC teachings and Ascension Glossary online, the continent of Atlantis was an area that covered much of the Atlantic Ocean, with its most northeastern tip called Alojas, known today as the UK, and the southwestern point, the Bermuda Islands. The Templar Anu were supposedly to blame, who progressively infiltrated Atlantean culture on behalf of the Anunnaki resistance, and through abusing ET Stargate technologies, they managed to sink the continent of Atlantis, tilt the Earth's axes some more, create huge earthquakes that led to flooding of some areas of Earth and shifting of some land masses. Their agenda was to use the Ark of the Covenant Stargate passage to run energy from Earth and into the sphere of Amenti, which housed the race memory and morphogenetic field for those souls who fell as a result of cataclysms in Tara, Earth's density 2 counterpart, so they can cut them off from ascension capability and trap them in density 1, harmonic universe 1, to experiment with and be used as slave labor. They wanted to take over the Alcyone spiral, which was an interdimensional portal to Sirius that the Great Pyramid was connected to, that allowed instant travel and intervention by guardian races in case the need ever arises to intervene from infiltrating forces by the intruder races and their fleets. It also provided humanity with access and contact to much of the cosmos, where peaceful beings could visit and use the Alcyone spiral to commune and trade with Earth humans, a time when the knowledge of interstellar races was well known and established. So you can see here the Atlantic Pacific continents depicted. You've got Lemuria, ancient Lemuria, and ancient Atlantis. You've got still part of the UK's Lohas, Atlantis, northeastern, and then southwest is still kind of connected into Florida and that area. So it's a large continent, hence why it's called the Atlantic Ocean. And quite interesting again, like I said, with my Lord of the Rings replica of Sauron's ring representing Saturn. It's somewhere there right in the middle of Atlantis, with the work I did at Knowlton Church and how it cracked after me rejoining the super yacht after my weird event in Cannon Hill back in 2018, if you recollect. So whether that's connected into that, probably at some level. So the resulting attempt by the Templar Anu to achieve this ghastly feat backfired on them due to defense mechanisms inserted into the passages to protect the sphere of Amenti that led to a return to sender pulse that immediately struck the main crystal generator beneath the island of Atlantis in 9558 BC. This resulted in huge explosions and tectonic shifting in the ocean floor that led to the literal sinking and swallowing of the landmass beneath the ocean floor, where it became part of the phantom Weislet matrix as the particles reversed their spin and remanifested themselves at a different angular rotation of particle spin and ended up as part of that matrix. The Syrian Council, responsible for guarding humanity, caught wind of the plan too late to intervene, but they did manage to help warn the population a few hours prior to the event and assist in relocating some of the loyal councils to Egypt on their ships, whilst many other surrounding cultures sought shelter on the ground or inside inner Earth. So as a result of the cataclysm, Syrian councils removed the remaining crystal generators from Earth's crust that had not been destroyed and returned them to Sirius B, which resulted in the confiscation of Earth's access to powerful ET technologies until they proved the maturity to govern themselves and manage that power responsibly. It really does seem like the few can ruin it for the many. Interestingly, the ET technologies talked about refer to UHF, which stands for ultra high frequency, fifth dimensional energy, that can charge certain instruments like UNCs to be used for specific purposes. It was through the Ark of the Covenant Stargate passages that this energy was accessed, but the Syrian councils put security seals in place to prevent any more abuses of energy and left behind two objects infused with this frequency, not as powerful as the UNCs, that became the rod and staff tools used to access inner Earth portals, facilitate healing, influence weather, and access portals to parallel Earth. This was held within inner Earth cultures and used to help rebuild surface civilizations for a time, but then later confiscated and deactivated. They were stored inside a box, which later became associated with the Ark of the Covenant by historians and those who lost the true meaning of the term. Now, I later had a dream around Christmas and New Year's Eve period in 2022, where I was shown a stargate in the astral/dream space inside the Great Pyramid, where a woman was giving me a brief introduction, where she showed me the slot for where this rod goes in order to select your space-time location when using the Ark of the Covenant Stargate passages, the one that supposedly Joshua 12 had used to ascend out of here in 27 AD when he was 39 years old. Okay, so all very, very interesting. And it makes a lot of sense. And again, recollect with what I picked up on with the UCC filing, okay, Jesus Christ, with them basically relaying orders to the world leaders to send gold on their Navy ships to the Bermuda Triangle for God to take care of once the skeleton crew leaves via helicopter. Okay, so they're obviously using these portal interface networks into their phantom matrix in order to take the gold to use for obviously their atmosphere and help sustain their immortality. So it all connects, kind of gives more credence, right? So I talk about and write about the frequency fence and quarantine Earth, right, which happened as a result of this. So as a result of these events, the sphere of Amenti, which was positioned in Andromeda, was triggered in starting its descent into Earth prematurely. Now, the sphere of Amenti and the halls of Amenti is otherwise the race morphogenetic field of those souls who fell from Tara into Earth. And so it's like you have to, in order to get back up and out and reform your higher identities and the memories you had before you fell, that's like your memory card, right? You must go back through that sphere of Amenti, okay, which is, it has to be kept energetically clean too. It can't be contaminated, which goes into our DNA down here, which is why it's carefully looked after under, you know, heavy security clearances, and it can only descend at specific times when Earth's frequencies can match the kind of frequencies held within the sphere, when individuals and Earth is ready to hold that frequencies with the beings, right, in order to then go back into merging with it to ascend back up and collect those parts of yourselves that kind of been left up there as we fell down here, kind of fragmented, right? So it's basically a huge memory card of all of our previous lives and our original form that we took on, that we must work towards getting back and up and through in order to reintegrate ourselves and ascend back to, you know, our eternal, immortal 12 DNA strands activated selves, basically as human, angelic, cosmic doctor guardians. So this process took 2,000 years for the halls of Amenti when it began, you know, slowly falling as a result of this cataclysm. But if nothing were done, then the energetic imbalance between the frequencies of Earth's grids and that of the sphere of Amenti would have resulted in the destruction of the Earth. Okay, so it's a bit premature that this was happening. The Elohim were apparently commissioned to create a frequency fence that was able to provide a buffer field between the D2 and D4 portions of Earth's connection along the dimensional scale, so the sphere of Amenti would not disrupt the evolution of human races. However, as Yasha writes, open quote, the overall effect of the frequency fence and the security tactics used to enforce it was that the physical Earth and its peoples were put under galactic quarantine, losing all direct assistance from and relationship to the multidimensional intergalactic communities, end quote. Moreover, as a result of this new energetic fencing of certain parts of Earth's energy field, humans also experienced this fencing off of certain parts of their multidimensional anatomy, particularly with access to the D4 astral level of awareness associated with dream recall. As Yasha writes, open quote, prior to the frequency fence, memory of other dimensional experiences during the dream state was far more lucid, as experiences the consciousness had while disassociated from its focus in the body during sleep would be stored in the form of electrical impulses within the consciousness And when the consciousness returned to the body, these electrical impulses would be translated through the body into coherent sequential memory patterns. Conscious recall of higher dimensional experiences requires the fourth DNA strand, as this strand allows the higher dimensional experience to be transferred into the lower DNA strands and then into cellular memory and conscious recognition. Close quote. This frequency fence was installed in 9540 BC, and I'm wondering whether this ties in with the firmament type structure I saw on Badbury Rings that time with my first entheogen experience, and also whether it connects with the actual firmament as mentioned in the Bible, albeit distorted interpretation of humanity's origins in the Genesis story that was heavily edited in the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, that maybe inspired the scribes to blend it in with their own fabrications. It's interesting to note that the lifting of the frequency fence was coded with 1111 and 1212, which the former is the popular code often seen with individuals who are on the awakening path, as I myself can also testify in seeing a lot of 1111s, many at times where I would be nudged to look at the clock. That maybe confirm this phenomenon. And obviously, remember that time with the super yachts in Albany with Antares there, and then the next day, of that weird experience, 1111 came to dock in its place. That night of me coming into my spirit animals, that went over the radio of Perfect Gods and Robert Longo with his paintings of the eagle, the lion, angel wing, jellyfish, and stuff like this. That obviously goes into the Christos realignment mission, if you recall, that Ashiana teaches with the 1111 and 1212 as well. So I finish off the chapter with the ego, the higher self, subconscious mind, and intuition. So furthermore, as a result of the frequency fence, the mental body of humans within the dimensional frequency bands of D3, the mental body level became split into a higher and lower portion of overtones within the respective field. The former higher overtone identity became what we refer to as our higher self, with the lower overtone identity the ego. This fracture is best explained by Iyasha, where she writes, open quote, "The lower mind's ego developed an exaggerated sense of dualistic perception as it became locked into 5th century perception. Using only 5th century perception, extreme distinctions between the inner world of personal identity and the outer world of manifest reality were perceived, as the cognition of where the inside and outside of things meet was blocked from conscious perception. Through the frequency fence, the ego became cut off from conscious relationship with its personal morphogenetic field and from the morphogenetic fields of its race and the planet. The ego awareness felt itself to be isolated and separate from the world around it and could not perceive the creative principle or purposes through which it came to be. The egotistical mind perceived itself as limited and finite, and so developed an overly aggressive need to dominate and control its external environment as a means of attempting to ensure its survival. As humans evolved to view themselves as finite creatures at the mercy of a seemingly hostile external environment, the lower egotistical mind became isolated, lonely, and very frightened. Healing of the egotistical mind would require its integration with the higher self mind, through which its power and place within the universe could be understood." Close quote. So this is a very important concept to understand, because as a result of this schism, in conjunction with another seal that was inserted under the seal of Palador, genetic mutation, which was a genetic mutation 5.5 million years ago, which caused a blockage between second and third chakras, that split the D3 mental awareness from our D2 emotional body. We developed what we refer to today as the subconscious mind. So portions of our higher self that could communicate through the D2 level, which is the subconscious mind, became emotional responses we label today as intuition. As Yasha writes, from Voyages 2 again, open quote, "Intuition represents information from the higher self sent to the conscious awareness by the body and subconscious mind." Furthermore, she adds, "The higher self serves as a bridge between the identity focused in HU1, Harmonic Universe 1 reality, and the soul imprint of that identity which is focused in Harmonic Universe 2. The first step in integrating the ego into its multidimensional identity is to open the lines of conscious communication between ego and the higher self. In contemporary terms, this is often called channeling your higher self, but the reality of that process is assembling the third DNA strand through which the two levels of mind can merge. If the ego makes a conscious effort to allow its higher self to speak, the third DNA strand assembly process is accelerated, and information received from the higher self will evolve from vaguely sensed intuitive impressions to direct inner verbal and visual communication. Then eventually the ego will understand the higher self to be part of its own identity, a focus of consciousness into which it can direct its awareness to receive a greater spectrum of information. Once a person becomes the higher self, there is no longer an egotistical focus, as the lower and higher minds have become integrated into a superconscious mind, which can develop multidimensional perception and abilities. Through the superconscious mind, the D2 subconscious mind and D1 physical body consciousness can also be integrated into the conscious awareness. Working with, through, and becoming the higher self is the next step in human evolution, and through this endeavor, the healing and assembly of the DNA can occur under the direction of the superconscious self, end quote. So it's good to see this confirmed with my intuition after I had my wake-up call with my focused intent on wanting to connect with my higher self over those years, ever since my crown chakra, or so-called 10th capstone chakra awakening. Okay, and that's what we certainly should be looking at bridging first and foremost, is our higher self and coming back into healing those kind of fragmented parts of our consciousness, which in later chapters, what I found out later in the teachings at the plasma level, goes into her revealing that our unconscious and subconscious should all be merged with our conscious, and it should all be consciously processed and made aware and available to us to control with the vast amounts of intelligence that is there within our on and subconscious minds. And also goes into how our two hemispheres of our brain are otherwise kind of, again, as below, representing this split and this schism between the fallout from, Andromeda. So it's got you've got part of this is Andromeda, part of it is like almost the Milky Way galaxy. This is kind of the split as seen within our own anatomy, right? That it should all be one. It should be one complete dome. There should be no severance or, cleavage with our brain, which kind of splits the two hemispheres. It should be one. Okay, so yeah, fascinating, given obviously what's happened in creation that we embody, that you can see as clues within our anatomy, none more so than with our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious selves. Okay, so it's something we can look forward to, heading back, reintegrating, healing as we ascend. We're going to come back into our full embodiment of our conscious selves, highest, most inner, most highest, eternal, authentic conscious selves. So humanity was plunged into the Dark Ages, and with the progressive infiltration of the intruder races since the fall of Atlantis, we really have been up against it, living in a world that is very much now reflecting the consciousness of its controllers. Okay, it's no wonder why the likes of Manly P. Hall, rightly or wrongly, referred to those individuals who are still suffering from the ego mind as the profane or prosaic, which leads me on to another interesting source from his book, which certainly rhymes and echoes the cataclysms written in Voyages 2 by Yasha, where Manly writes, open quote, "In the Critias, Plato describes in detail the divine foundation of the Atlantean Empire, originally known as Poseidonus. The golden age preserved in myth and legend, when the gods walked with men, depicts the zenith of Atlantean civilizations. The demigods of the ancient world were the Atlanteans, to whom every civilized nation owes an incalculable debt of gratitude. In the British Museum, there is a remarkable document known as the Trano manuscript, which was written over 3,500 years ago by the Mayas of Yucatan, containing an authentic account of the cataclysm which sank the continent of Atlantis. This priceless document contains the following statement according to the translation by Le Plongeon, where he says, "In the year 6 Can, on the 11th Mulak, in the month Zak, there occurred terrible earthquakes, which continued without interruption until 13th Chuan. The country of the hills of mud, the land of Mu, was sacrificed. Being twice upheaved, it suddenly disappeared during one night, the basin being continually shaken by volcanic forces. Being confined, these caused the land to sink and to rise several times in various places. At last the surface gave way, and 10 countries were torn asunder and scattered. Unable to stand the forces of the convulsions, they sank with their 64 million inhabitants. Before the Atlantean continent was submerged, the initiates of the Atlantean mysteries, carrying with them the secret doctrines entrusted to their keeping, immigrated into Egypt and other parts of the earth, where they would be safe from the impending catastrophe. Thus their secret teaching, with its priceless value to subsequent ages, was preserved. They established centers of learning and promulgated the code, clothed in the language of symbolism, to such as they deemed worthy to receive it." Close quote. Keep in mind that Manly P. Hall wrote this back in the 1920s. Okay, so obviously with the records of what happened in the cataclysm within the secret societies was certainly pretty accurate with what was, passed down to Manly at that time that he got his hands on. Okay, back in the 1920s when he wrote his book. All right, so highly recommend reading Voyages 2. Secrets of Mementi is like the modern day Bible that everyone should be studying, like the Bible, like Christians do study the Bible, like the Jews do study the Torah, and like the Islamists, the Muslims study the Quran, right? Because it's just full of wisdom, full of so many beautiful gems, very empowering, and can otherwise help explain a lot of these myths that have gone on that people are still kind of scratching around in the dark trying to figure out. That otherwise tells it how it is, And like I said, when you tune into yourself and fit into the encryption behind the information, it certainly comes with that resonance of truth that kind of acts to also help activate your DNA and to get you back into alignment. But yeah, it is fascinating. So yeah, that wraps up chapter 14. Thanks for listening, folks. I hope you enjoyed that one. It's actually quite educational. Mad experience with obviously Marduk, this kind of Satan entity, Enki, the red dragon. So yeah, and what going forward is quite interesting. I kind of started to experience first off the grey aliens, then it was Satan, the red dragons. Then I came into like more of a Luciferian spirit and forces, and then the white dragons, and then the green dragons, right? And then some of these kind of like jinn type fin-born entities of the Fatali, who are like pure shape-shifting spirits, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, we'll get to that in the timeline. So yeah, I kind of got this sequential taste of different flavors of these fallen forces as I progressed on my journey. So in the next chapter, chapter 15, we're going to be going over fungus and parasites, holistic health, my MRI scan, frequency attacks, chemtrails and barium, dream experiences, reclaiming multidimensional aspects of myself, the dream and mind, astral body anatomy, manifestation transduction sequences, and the shadow body anatomy and the net. All right, folks. So another highly technical one, full of really good information. So look forward to that. I'll see you over there. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay sovereign. Ciao for now.